Hey, welcome to the Autopsy of Unwise Choices, a journey we're going to take into the crossroads of life and the consequences that follows. I'm your host, P.D. Ware, bringing you nearly 2 decades of experience from the deaf industry. Each episode, we will dissect the real-life stories and peel back the layers of decisions that have been leading our youth to unfortunate ends. Our mission, to illuminate the path of wiser choices for our youth. So let's embark on this journey together, because every choice tells a story. Are you ready to listen? Hey, welcome to the Autopsy of Unwise Choices. I am your host, PD Ware. For those of you all that don't know me, PD is Pamela Denise. That's my birth name. Pam is fine if you see me out in the streets. But I created this podcast. The mission and the purpose is to transform youth decision making. I remember a few months ago, before I left the medical examiner's office as the chief death investigator, just thinking back over a lot of the cases that I worked, none of the headlines, which are new to many of us, were just the profound amount of violence that we've seen that's taken the lives of so many youth. And so I created this podcast to shed light and to give a voice to the community so that we can tackle the underlying issues of what's causing our kids to have to be buried by their parents. I remember at 14 years old going to a funeral with my mom and seeing the funeral directors interacting with the family. And I told my mom, I said, hey, I want to be a mortician when I grow up. And she didn't think anything was wrong with that. And she fostered that ambition, that drive. And so 20 plus years later, I'm sure she didn't realize that not only would I serve my community, but I would also become the mortician for my family. And so I invite you to subscribe to the podcast. You can follow us, the autopsy of unwisechoices.com, on our YouTube page, PD Ware Inspires. So I am an inspirational speaker. And the reason that I want to inspire our youth and to transform their decision making is because I came to the stark realization that I had not only assisted in more autopsies, worked more crime scenes, but I had also buried more kids than I had been to graduations. I am a wife. I've been married to Mr. Jonathan Ware for 18 years. So he's been putting up with me for a long time. But we have a 12-year-old son. And Death and I have had a special relationship since the age of 14 years old. And I have withstood the test of time on many a scenes, on many a days in the autopsy suite, many a days in the prep room. But the one thing that gives me pause that I know would surely break my heart would be if I lost my child. And don't get me wrong, I love my husband, love him to life. But it's just something about a parent and the potential of losing a child. And I know that no parent wants to have to go through that. And when I started on my journey, when the emotions, the desire to want to get into the mortuary field came about, I never imagined that so many parents would have to bury so many kids. It was unheard of. So many, like we didn't see this. There was no. I would collect the obituary notices, as odd as that seems, and I would keep them on the bench. I played sports in high school, and I told my coach, I said, "Hey, coach, I'm gonna open a funeral home up one day," and she said, "Pam, I think that's a great idea." And back in those days, in the early '90s, they were putting not only the names of the people who lost their loved ones, they had their age, and they also had the cause of death. And you rarely saw kids' names in the paper. The kids' names that I remember seeing may have been a childhood cancer, may have been a motor vehicle crash, but there was never any continuous cycle of violence that I saw on the landscape when I first got into mortuary science. And I just don't believe that our kids were put here to never fulfill the purpose, to come to leave due to gunshot wounds, to come here and leave because of a motor vehicle crash. And everything is fun in the moment until that moment becomes a memory. And one of the things that I tell kids all the time when I'm speaking is that there is risk in death, but there is no peace for mom, for dad, for grandmother, for brother, for sister, for communities in the manner in which our kids are leaving here. And so we're going to dive deep into opportunities, into the decision making of our youth. And we're going to hear voices from those that have firsthand experience of seeing what those poor choices have done and the ways that we can reverse this desensitization to death. And so that's the mission of this podcast. And so I am thankful for all of you all that are going to join me on this journey. This is I very rarely like to be in the presence, but it's such a heartbreaking topic that we need to continuously keep shedding positive light on in hopes to turn around our kids that we still have. We still need the kids that we still have in our presence. If you're involved in a kid's life in any way, regardless of whether you're the biological mother or father, if you're an auntie, if you're an uncle, we need you. The kids need you. Our kids need encouragement. They need positive avenues to go down. They need people to sit down to give them solid instruction, to impart wisdom into them. Our parents need wisdom imparted into them. Perhaps the dream that they had never got a chance to be realized, or perhaps their dream was snubbed out. There are so many people that I've met on my speaking journey that have come up to me and said, hey, you know what? I wanted to be a mortician when I was young, but my parent was like, no, you can't do that. And I'll admit it's not for everybody. But what I will say to that effect is that never doubt a kid's dream, because you never know what that dream could become. That could be the key to the door that you can't enter. And who knows if another key will come along. And so I want to encourage you all each and every day that you wake up and you can take a deep breath, because I promise you, for all of the hours, the days, the nights that I pulled up to the medical examiner's office and got out of my car, knowing that when I got inside of that building, I was going to see some new names that weren't there when I left the day before. And if you can hear my voice, then it's not too late. There's a child in some capacity in your life that you're ignoring because you had a long work day, because you got kids of your own, because you just don't feel inspired to do anything. Or maybe you don't feel like your voice is important enough. Well, I'm here to tell you that it is. We need all the voices in this city, across this country. Gun violence is the leading cause of death for children and teens in the United States of America, ages 1 to 19. And I promise you, as autopsy technicians, pathologists, death investigators, we see the worst side of what happens to poor decision making, to bullying, to suicide, to the car crashes where kids are being burned beyond recognition. And you have to tell a mother, a father, I'm sorry, but you're not going to be able to see your child, because we're trying to prevent more trauma that will mentally break them. Poor decision, poor association. Some of our kids are crying out because they just want somebody to talk to. All they need is just maybe that one encouraging word, and you got it. And it's your mission to share. So if there's a kid that crosses your path, that crosses your mind on a regular basis, then it's your duty to encourage that kid, to push that kid, pray for that kid, uplift that kid. Because guess what? If each one reach one, there's no telling how massive the ripple effect could be and change the trajectory of what we're seeing in this city and across this country. That's why this podcast was created. We're going to dive into some deep subjects, some deep topics. And it's not going to be pretty every step along the way, but I promise you I'm going to be honest. But what I will not share is specific cases. I will not cross any ethical boundaries, not intentionally. And we will be respectful of the parents and the families that have lost their loved ones. And so I encourage you, as you join me on this quest, I want you to stay in prayer. And I want you to do your best every day to stay positive and show up with the right attitude. And make a commitment that no matter how tough your day may be, just know that there's a kid out there crying out. And that if you would just send a message to them, be it directly, you know their parents, hey, tell Lisa I was thinking about her today. Tell Jason I saw something and thought of him today. Man, just to know that somebody's thought about you. Because a lot of times, even as adults, we think, hey, nobody cares. And I know we got a lot of people in this city that care what's going on, because we're seeing it all over the news. We're talking about it every single day. And I've seen the worst of it. I've logged over 60,000 hours in the presence of death, with the smell of death, touching death in the midst of death, day in and day out for almost 20 years. And I want to see a change. And until it's my time to take my last breath, I ain't giving up. And I encourage you not to do the same. So for those of you all that are willing to walk this journey with me, regardless of the terrain, no matter how tough it gets, let's go. So I urge you to subscribe to the podcast, because I promise you, we're going to go in to some places that some people don't have access to, so we can uncover the things that we need to in order to be able to battle with the appropriate gear, with the appropriate words, with the appropriate type of love that we need to turn our kids around in a different direction from where they're going. And so season 1, we're going to start where my journey began, in the mortician's chair. And episode 2 is going to be me talking with Mr. Preston C. Jefferson II, one of my mentors, who's taught me everything that he knows and everything that I know about mortuary science. So I look forward to seeing you all on this journey. Don't forget to subscribe. And if this can help anybody that you know, please do share it. Be blessed.
Thank you so much for joining the Autopsy Unwise Choices, where today's stories are more than just cautionary tales. They're beacons guiding our youth towards better decisions. And remember, the choices that they make today shape their tomorrows. So if today's episode moved you in any way, then share it with someone who needs to hear these lessons. Follow us at pdwareinspires.com to check out the weekly blog, book speaking engagements, and check out dates for upcoming live events. And remember, until next time, encourage our youth to make choices that pave the way for brighter futures.